Okay, here's my deck for Overdress. We went top 8 in London. Very sad. We lost to the Italian team in top 8. Very nice guys. Basically, my opening hand was heal, 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 crit, crit, grade 1. Like, after my 6th card. And from there, I knew, like, yeah, this is going nowhere. It was 7 rounds of Swiss. I was X1 in Swiss. I think this was the best deck by far. Like, Jet. Nothing changes here. You don't have any agency whatsoever. Then we have the G-Zone, and I mean, that's just 4-4, right? 2 of this little guy. This is Stride Fodder and a Beat Stick, but honestly, I never called him to rearguard that entire tournament, I think. Just solid to search with the 2, and then discard for Stride, and that way you go plus, because for some reason this deck needed, like, infinite plussing. This is, like, one of the few decks that actually has a ride line that goes +2. Actually +3, right? Because the thing you discard now, yeah, it's +3. That's crazy. Then we have 2 Jet, because sometimes you do go into next stage, but it's actually pretty rare. Still, you want access to it. You don't want to see one go to damage, and then you can surge the other one with a grade 1 anymore. So 2 is fine. Then we have the best grade 2 in the deck, of course. This is the guy that gives us access to, like, Swirler GG looping. And that way you will be drawing a bunch of cards. This card, I think, actually is the weakest card in the deck. If I had tested Overdress, this might have been something else. Because, like, sure, sometimes it's cool to have extra shield, but really, I think if this was maybe even more Gungrams, hot take, then that would have probably been better. I would probably, if I tested Overdress, oh, that sounds so bad. I would have probably turned this into more Gungrams. Then we have 2 of this girl. She soul charges. The only times Jet loses, I feel, is when you don't establish a broken early game, or if you lose the grade 2 game against another Jet player. And this card doesn't win you the grade 2 game. So being able to always have Gungram Swirler GG stuff, I think is better than this card. This is basically like really, really shit Swirler. But again, you should have probably had like 4 Gungram instead, hot take. But yeah, this card basically, it's really solid in the prolonged grade 2 games. Because if they don't remove it, it'll keep on giving you the soul to resolve more GGs and Gungrams, which is again why you should play 4. And then also it makes Swirler bigger later on. Then we have 4 Swirler, the star of the show, of course. Basically, grade 1, you always want to have Swirler GG, so you can just bash your opponent's skull in. And this card is, well, the soul charge in that equation. And then later on, of course, by properly doing your lines on the stride turns, this gets like huge together with the other stuff, and that way your numbers on the 1st and 2nd stride are like way scarier. By 3rd stride, of course, your numbers are insane and their hand is gone, so it doesn't really matter then. But on 1st and 2nd stride, properly making your lines to where this is hitting magic numbers at all times is like really, really insane. Then we have 4 GG. Well, you want to open Swirler GG. Literally the Jet Mirror. Don't assume you matter. All that matters is that you open Swirler GG combinations so that you have a free field and then you win the grade 2 game just off that. My only deck build mistake I find here is only 2 Gungram. I gave them back to Jay now. So this is 2 Gungram. But I think, honestly, if it was singles, and you should kind of deck build as if it's singles anyway, I think these should be 2 more Gungrams. Because, like, any hand where you don't open combinations of these is just much worse. And if you play the mirror, they open Swirler GG and you don't, it's probably over. Like, there's very little you can do about that. So for that reason, I would do this. Hot take, I know. Also, if you run out of chargers by 2nd stride, which sometimes happens if, like, they went to damage or, you know, awkward stuff like that. Of course, you can put them back, I understand, but ideally you have access to both options still in deck at all times on every stride. So being able to have like even more of them is pretty nice, because then you can trigger your Swirlers more, which makes them bigger. So I would play 4 Gungram. Gungram is literally GG and Swirler in the early game. 4 Stride Fodders, because striding good and surge jet good sometimes. Though, to be fair, like, next stage doesn't come up that often. There are, of course, like, times where it really matters. I did win against Hal on Eva. The next stage push was so good that ended up being the win. Elementaria, triple Steam Maiden, because player agency sucks, I guess. And then we have the crits, because we can only play this amount, and if we could play more, we would all play more. Then we have the funny card that sometimes auto wins games, and we have triple draw. The reason for the draws is that fronts are awkward in this deck, because certain lines it's optimal to not have another front row rear guard on your stride, and so then your front would just suck. And also because you always want to attack with small rears first. Like if you go like Swirler, Vanguard, GG, you're swinging with Swirler and GG first to rip like maximum amount of cards out of the opponent's hand. So then the front doesn't do anything. And you don't want to always do suboptimal attack patterns just in case you hit a front. So for that reason, draws. And then we have the 4 Healeronis. Look at this mat! Do you see how fucking hot that is? God, this is a pretty mat. I'm not even into like mech stuff and so forth, but this is like sick. So yeah, use it with Solemn. The shading goes crazy on this. Yeah. So now for the other deck profile, we have my premium one. Now I won't be doing a very long one because I've already posted like 2 premium profiles of this deck so far. First, my third place at Worlds, which had like most of the depth, I want to say. It included like all the explanations for all the cards. This was before people had caught on to Melty. This was before most people had caught on to Mirada. This was before people had caught on to Eleanor and Hendrina and all of this stuff. So like in that deck profile, that's already like half an hour. So you can watch that for the in-depth stuff. Then in France, I made some more changes that not many people had been doing yet. And then now I once again changed the deck. So now I'm once again going to tell you why I made certain changes, but not all the rest. So if you want to go very, very, very in-depth on Highlander, I suggest you watch the Worlds deck profile and then the France one, and now this one, you know, to fill in the last holes. But I'm not gonna tell you why I'm playing like Lara, you know? We're past that now. So the deck list, what changed? The reindeer stayed the same. Lupina, Ange, Tirua stayed the same. This one, however, is new. Gerlinde. Basically, my thinking was that I wanted more good ride targets in the deck. And previously, this was Ange G. Now, why didn't I change from Ange G to this? If you remember, Ange G was basically yet another way to ride down. Because at Worlds, everyone would be riding down. I expected my whole day to be Steam Maiden and Highlander. So then every single turn 3 should have ride downs. But what I noticed in France, and what I probably should have known had I properly tested for France, but I hadn't because I was playing Yu-Gi-Oh! What I noticed in France was, wow, no one's fucking riding down anymore. Like, there's not that many Steams, there's not that many Highlander. There's also the fact that a bunch of people, we were playing teams, so a bunch of people will not even have that because they might not be in the same seed I'm in. So when there's so many people riding up, suddenly the Ange, which was already the weakest card in the deck, now became even weaker. So I chuck out Ange. I was done with, you know, needing extra contingency plans for riding down because riding down wasn't as big part of a meta anymore. So now I just wanted one more good ride target, and it was this one. This one basically says check top 7 if they're all different, call 2, which is a shit version of Lara, but it has a different name than Lara, and I don't want to play 2 Lara. I saw Louis in London playing 2 Lara because obviously Lara is one of the strongest things to find of reindeer, but the issue is I was already not playing even 2 fucking Katire at Worlds because I was too afraid of whiffing. So I'm not gonna whiff with like double Lara. I'm not taking that risk. Now in teams it's more justifiable because if you like auto lose because of the whiff, then sure your 2 teammates could still win, but still I didn't want to do that. So instead I'm playing shit Lara Gerlinde. So this is one more good ride target, and also indirectly it can still ride down. Because we are playing so much Soul Blast stuff like this chick, like Yuika, like Eleanor, like Hendrina. There's actually a bunch of cards she can find that also ride down. So while this is not exactly the same as Ange, because Ange will always ride down, this is still performing the function of ride down pretty reliably to a point where cutting the Ange was justifiable. And again, later on in the game, where Ange completely started sucking ass, she is actually pretty good. She generates another attack, she generates field, she'll be able to go plus and so forth. She might find you like this chick that then makes you actually plus. She might find you Betty, which makes your hand better and so forth. So yeah, Gerlinde, a new addition to replace Ange. Then in the grade 2 lineup, you notice Pearl Sisters are gone. I was done with Pearl Sisters because Katire was always like the second copy of whichever one you were missing, so you would see Pearl Sisters like very often, whereas now you don't anymore. And it's cute to like draw both Pearl Sisters and feel really good, but overall I did not want to just sit with dead cards in my hand all the time, so they are out. And instead, once again, I wanted cards that would help me when people rode up, because people were now riding up. So I added the Sandy because this is like a crazy card later on in the game, and also, if you notice in the grade 1 lineup, I added Ricius and Honoli back in. Again, again, if a bunch of people are riding up, these cards are, again, great because in the stride turns and so forth, these become mad with Citron. And also with this chick that adds back the Resius. So having one more way to G-guard into these two, I felt was very solid when we're playing stride games again. Because I noticed in France, you know, everyone is now riding up or playing decks that ride up. Then I'm adding the Shiratsuyu here. Basically, this is another shit Kutire. Why is it a shit Kutire? Essentially, the power of Kutire isn't searching. The power of Kutire is putting 3 bodies on the board to bounce with Ange and Tirua and so forth. Obviously, the power of searching is also insane. But the thing that really catapulted like Reindeer Kutire was the plus. So Shiratsuyu, just like Melty being like Kutire at home, Shiratsuyu is also Kutire at home. She adds back this little chick to your hand, and so you have 2 normal units out of 1 card to bounce with Ange and Tirua. If Melty is Kutire at home, she's Melty at home. So that's why she's in here. If she soul charges a grade 3, you will not ride down as reliably anymore, but that's quite alright, because you have a lot of other soul blasts, and again, a lot of people are now riding up, so that risk was no longer as important to me. Then in the grade 1 lineup, again, you see these 2 little ones now back for defense, and then the other card that changed, was this chick already in my France build? I don't remember, but this is like a shitty Lieselot. So again, this Lieselot, Melty, Shiratsuyu are like the 2 cards in 1 card to make Ange and Tirua go off when you don't have Kutire anymore. And again, bonus that she's a Soul Blast, because this way you don't have to play garbage as Myrtoa. So you can like Ange or Gerlinde or Lara into her to then ride down still. So your ride down, while the consistency of it went slightly down because you cut Ange, it went slightly up with this. So like maybe the consistency decreases like what, 1% or something. That's worth it when everyone is riding up anyway. In the trigger lineup, we also changed something. I swapped around the ratios of soul crit and stride crit, and the reason is, with so much stride fodder, you know, you're probably going to be fine, but if everyone is riding up, you're actually going to be Heltradaing more often, and you're already using a lot of soul with these other cards. Tsuyu is going to take 2 soul and then put 1 back in. This takes out a soul. So you're actually more starved for soul than for stride crits. That's why I swapped those ratios around. And then the rest, I think, stayed the same. Yeah. So that's the reasoning for my Highlander changes. That's the deck right now. Of course, with History Collection, everything changes. I don't even know how good Highlander would be post-History Collection. With everyone riding up, ride-downs are maybe not as good anymore. Again, I still need to test a bunch, but that's the reason for the changes. So, if you still need a beautiful playmat, go to zerodamagegaming.com. Use code Solemn for a discount. Most beautiful playmats ever. There's also deck boxes.